sit back and relax as you listen to the Texas State Sports Podcast. Find us online at TexasStateSports.com. Put it in! Hey guys, what's happening? This is the Texas State Sports Podcast, and if you don't know, my name is Tyler Mayforth, and I am the sports editor and Texas State beat writer for the San Marcos Daily Record. Have you recovered from last week's win? If not, I cannot blame you, since it was absolutely wild. Texas State led 27-17 midway through the fourth quarter, but that's when South Alabama fought back and took its first lead of the game with 1 minute and 32 seconds left. But that's when the Bobcats worked some magic, converting a 4th and 24 when Tyler Jones found Ben Ija for a 51-yard gain, and soon after, Jason Dan kicked the game-winning 41-yard field goal to give Texas State a 33-31 win. That was the Bobcats' 5th win of the season, leaving them just 1 win shy of bowl eligibility. Texas State can become bowl eligible with a win this week at Idaho. This would be a perfect time to bring in my guest this week, as I am joined by Sean Kramer, who is the managing editor of thevandalnation.com. Sean is a student at the University of Idaho, and if you hear what sounds like a football practice in the background, don't worry about it. Sean spoke to me from inside the Kibbie Dome as he watched the Vandals practice.
Sean, as a student, it's had to be tough these last, couple years being a Vandals fan, just trying to cheer for them the last of the, Rob Akey years, and now with Paul Petrino trying to turn it around. How's it been? I mean, has it been that bad, or do you see promise out of these kids?
It's probably a little bit of the former. It has been that bad. The team hasn't really given, the fan base and the community a ton to cheer about, a lot of optimism to be happy about. But there have been flashes with the Petrino era, but there's also a lot of the fans who still might be a little bitter at the firing of Rob Akey, and a lot of the fans who look at the Paul Petrino era and say, it's just the same old Vandals. So really, it's up to this team and this program and this new coaching staff to really now, in the final part of this season, come up with a couple signature wins, come up with a couple wins that, if this team finishes 3-9 or 4-8, that would really change the perception as opposed to if the Vandals finish 1-11 again.
What has been the difference now with the Petrino era, as you called it, compared to the Akey era, if we want to say that?
The biggest difference is discipline. I mean, you watch a practice that Rob Akey operates, and then you watch a practice that Paul Petrino operates, and you'll notice a stark difference in terms of the activity level of the assistant coaches, the noise level of the assistant coaches, and just the overall discipline that they try to instill in the program. And you notice that on game day a little bit. There's a lot less mental errors, but it's hard to translate on the field in terms of success with obviously the lack of depth that this team has right now, the youth that this team has right now, and just the overall lack of talent a little bit.
And from what I understand, there were some players that really did not buy into Petrino's system, and they're no longer on the team. What does Petrino require of his players in the system?
He just requires a commitment to the system, a commitment to the goal, to the program, to the idea that he's trying to build here at the University of Idaho. Rob Akey was a big players coach, and when he got fired, a lot of players felt betrayed, and a lot of players didn't want to, join Petrino. So a lot of the talented players like a Karel Kearney or a Tracy Carter, players like that. So there were up to 20 plus players from last season who departed from the program, and it's hurt a little bit in the depth, but the way Petrino looks at it is in the long term, he's going to have the guys who wants to be here. And this is a very young team. This team has played, I think if you include redshirt freshmen, up to 15 redshirt and true freshmen, 3 of them on the defensive line alone. Obviously the starting quarterback, who will not play on Saturday because of an injury, but who has started before, Chad Chalice, redshirt freshman. So it's a really young team, a depth-tested team, but the players who are still here are the ones who have bought in.
So this isn't going to be the team that Texas State faced last year and beat 34-7
not even
at Bobcat Stadium.
No, not even close. You look at the front seven, it's completely different. None of the linebackers are back. Vincent Mayo is gone. The secondary, Aaron Grimes, Tracy Carter's gone. The quarterback, the biggest difference, Dominique Blackman, gone. a lot of new faces will be on the field on Saturday compared to the team that beat Idaho 38-7 last season.
And yes, 38-7. And speaking of the quarterback situation, I saw on your report on vandalnation.com that Taylor Davis is expected to start. He started his first game last week against, I believe it was against Ole Miss. What does Taylor Davis do differently that Texas A might need to look out for if they were expecting Chad out there?
If they were expecting Chad out there, they would expect up to 15 quarterback runs in the game, both designed runs and just him taking off and scrambling. It is pretty much kind of a true option offense when Chad Chalice was out there, a read option offense, that is. So they'll set everything up with the quarterback runs and the running back runs. But when Taylor Davis is out there, it's more of a pocket-based system. He can get out of the pocket a little bit. He likes to move around a little bit, but he's kind of the bigger frame guy, so he's really more comfortable sitting in the pocket and delivering it, strong arm down the field. So that's what. And Texas State will have the film from Ole Miss, and Taylor Davis played 3+ quarters at Arkansas State. So really, what Idaho is doing offensively right now is pretty solidified with Taylor Davis.
And it seems as if there is a running back by committee right there. I see James Baker as their leading rusher with 372 yards, but only 2 starts. Jarrell Brown only has 1 start, but he has 128 yards. Is that true? Is there just a running back by committee? Anyone can do anything in that system?
Really, it's based on how they practice. That's what Paul Petrino says. He puts all the running backs out there. He'll give them kind of equal reps during the week, but whoever kind of practices better is the one who will go. And then when he gets into the game, he'll kind of give them all some carries in the first quarter, and then it's kind of the hot hand. But the last couple of weeks, it has been James Baker. At Arkansas State, James Baker really broke out, has ran well. He's ran well previously this year, and I think Petrino's kind of realized who his most talented and experienced guy is, and that is certainly James Baker right now. He's the hardest runner. He's got successive speed, and he's powerful in between the tackles. So I would expect James Baker to get the plethora of carries on Saturday.
And when they're throwing the ball, I see, 6 different guys with 10 or more catches, but then Desmond Epps, 582 yards. What does he do that makes him the number 1 option?
He's clearly the number 1 option because of his commitment to meticulous route running, of his speed. He's just really fast. He's not afraid to go over the middle, take a ball, and then try to catch it outfield. He gets down the field really quickly, and he's just an overall hard worker. And he's the guy who will stay after practice and run extra routes and really pay attention to what he's doing. And so he's that kind of guy, so that kind of what sets him apart. Other guys, Najee Lovett's a little bit fast, but for some reason, the revolving door at quarterback might have hurt him a little bit. He had a good rapport with Dominic Blackman last season, but not so much with the guys this season. And then it's really just a crapshoot after that with guys like Deion Watson and Roman Runner and Trent Cowan of who he wants to throw out there to catch balls. There's a lot of depth on the wide receiver core. There's nobody really sticking out after Kevin Epps.
And one thing I saw on your blog recently to kind of switch gears, you got an exclusive interview with the Sun Belt Commissioner, Karl Benson. What were some of the major takeaways from discussing with Karl about the future of the conference and what he expects out of the Sun Belt, I guess, in that future?
Well, the 2 major takeaways I took out was, who Karl Benson expects the 12th member of the Sun Belt to be. And I really came away with the impression that he wants James Madison to be that school. Of course, James Madison has conducted their FBS feasibility study and are expected to announce their decision after the new year. It's expected that they're going to say they want to go FBS. And if that's the case, they're probably going to want a Conference USA invite, but I'm sure Karl Benson would very much want them to be a part of the Sun Belt because they fit not only the 6th member of the East in football, but they would be the 6th member of the East in all other sports as well. If not, I think he would look toward Liberty as his second option. He brought up Liberty, he brought up Jacksonville State, and some other schools in the eastern United States that are really looking at the Sun Belt. He dismissed the notion that New Mexico State could be added in all sports again because of the geographic footprint. The second thing I took away was really how he talked about how the Sun Belt needs to position itself here in the near future, starting next year, in the Group of 5. I mean, he talked about in the entire history of Sun Belt football, they really have not had a top 25 consistent flagship program like in the WAC. He had Fresno State, Boise State, Nevada, Hawaii. He had all these teams who had runs and competed for BCS Bowls, and that's never happened in the Sun Belt. So he talked about the need for the Sun Belt to really get that, and he talked about the need for the Sun Belt to get that by eliminating money games. He talked about how a majority of the teams in the Sun Belt were addicted to the $1 million guarantees. I mean, we're going to see it with Idaho here in a couple of weeks when they go down to Florida State for $950,000 and USC in 2 years for $1 million. And you see that with Troy. I mean, Texas State's played some of those games. All the other schools in the Sun Belt have played those games, and he really wants those to maybe not get eliminated, but to get reduced to a matter of so the teams in the Sun Belt can play competitive out-of-conference schedules that will set them up for some top 25 consideration if they can have runs like Arkansas State had, the last couple of years.
And from your standpoint, does Idaho truly fit in the Sun Belt? I know they brought in New Mexico State to fill out, to bring them up to where they can get near 12 and have that conference championship game. But does Idaho fit what you find in Karl's mind is that Sun Belt mentality, that Sun Belt footprint, if have you? I mean, it seems like it's starting to come across the nation now.
He talked about the footprint and the need for the Sun Belt to have a footprint. But he emphasized more the need for the Sun Belt to have a conference championship game, for the Sun Belt to have 12 teams, to have divisions and play a conference championship game. And really what helped Idaho was the fact that it was already an established FBS program. They didn't have to dip into the FCS and transition a number of programs in order to fill out, 12. He had 2 in the West that he was familiar with his time in the WAC. And really Idaho is going to be committed to the Sun Belt for as long as they can. I mean, Rob Spear has talked about wanting a conference out in the West, but really that's not going to happen anytime soon. I wouldn't say within the next 5 years at least. So I'd say in terms of Idaho staying FBS, it is a really good fit. I mean, football programs charter flights, so it's not, and the Sun Belt's going to help even that out with some revenue sharing. So that's not going to be that huge of an issue. But I do think Idaho does provide something to the Sun Belt, and being an established FBS program.
How long do you think it's going to take for Paul Petrino to kind of turn that program around to get them back to where they're going to make another bowl run like they did not too long ago?
I really want to look at the schedule next season. I mean, you look at schools like Georgia Southern is going to be on there, Appalachian State's going to be on there, Western Michigan's going to be on there, and just the entire Sun Belt schedule. Just because really, maybe you look at Arkansas State, Idaho avoids Louisiana Lafayette next season. There's just such an open kind of race and competition in the Sun Belt Conference. I mean, it could happen as soon as next season. There's still going to be a lot of youth. So maybe, Idaho will probably compete anywhere from the 4 to 6 win range next season. But maybe by 2015, really when they're able to finally get 6 home games instead of just 5, and they schedule an easy FCS opponent. I mean, I know in 2015 they have 2 money games that they're going to lose, USC and Auburn. But it comes down to being able to win in conference and win your competitive out-of-conference games, and I think in the next couple of years that might be feasible just because of how wide open their schedule is going to be.
And for right now, Texas State is a non-conference game for the Vandals after last year being a conference game in the WAC, next year being a conference game in the Sun Belt. But in 2013, it's a non-conference game, and I think I saw the betting line in Las Vegas opened at Texas State as a 13-point favorite going into the Kibbie Dome. It has since dropped to 10. Would you imagine it dropping even further? Do you think Idaho can give the Bobcats a game, or do you think it's going to push a little bit higher to where you think that, maybe Texas State will outclass Idaho this year?
I think 10 points for Texas State is actually pretty appropriate. Idaho's played well in the Kibbie Dome. Obviously with the exception of Fresno State being, the top 20 team in the country that they are, but you also look at a program like Northern Illinois, who's one spot below Fresno State, and they came in here and they struggled a little bit. A lot of it is the travel. It's unorthodox travel to get to Moscow, Idaho, because you have to fly. A lot of teams fly into Spokane, Washington, which is right by. It's about a 5-hour drive away from Seattle, and it's about an hour and a half drive away from Moscow, Idaho. So you have to fly into Spokane, and then you have to drive down to Moscow, Idaho, an hour and a half to get there. Northern Illinois flew into Spokane, and they drove 2 hours down to a town called Lewiston, Idaho, and then drive back up to Moscow the day before, so that might have hurt them even more. So sometimes teams who've never been to Idaho before struggle with it. And as I said before, Idaho played relatively well at home. They played really competitive at home. They beat Temple, BCS AQ team here. So I do think 10 points is pretty accurate, but Texas State is obviously a team that's a more established program. They have more talent, and they're kind of established with Coach Fran. So I do think it worked. But I would expect that Texas State would be that team, somewhere along the lines of a 31-21 Texas State win would probably sound about right to me.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Texas State Sports Podcast. I would like to thank Sean Kramer of thevandalnation.com for speaking with me about the Idaho Vandals and the future of the Sun Belt Conference. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to email me at tmayforth@sanmarcosrecord.com, find me on Twitter at smdrtyler, or leave a comment on our Facebook fan page, which can be found by searching Texas State Sports. Be sure to follow my coverage all season long, but especially this week, as we try to find out if Texas State can become bowl eligible for the first time in program history. As always, you can find my coverage online at sanmarcosrecord.com or on the blog at texasstatesports.com.